I'm not recording. So that's
Oh.
there you go. See,
Well, to the like 15 people who watch us live, we're about to do our 10 seconds of silence.
Oh,
Now,
because we didn't do it before we press play.
Yeah. Okay, let's just do the 10 seconds.
Is everyone's mics on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And for the people who are like, what just happened? That's for we do our clean audio. We take out background noise. You can get our clean audio on iTunes. 15 people who watch us on YouTube. Okay. Anywhere you get your
before we start, guys, I'm getting a little bit of like a lag. And so this might be a thing. I might need to come out and come back in, but just to let you know, that's what's happening on my end.
Okay. Okay. So we're live.
We are live. This is Literary Roadhouse. One short story once a week. I'm Maya.
I'm Gerald.
And I'm Anais.
And this week we are discussing Carnival 9 by Caroline Yoachim. This is a story about Z, who lives in a wind-up universe where an unseen maker decides how many turns to wind each individual each day. Z is born with a strong mainspring, which means she can be wound more than most, and she struggles as a child with the urge to explore and have adventures. One day, she sneaks out to a carnival in hopes of finding her absent mother and meets a boy named Val, who shows her all the wonders of Carnival 9. Train where the dolls gather to be entertained by acrobats and games. Later, after Z grows up, she returns to the carnival with her father to dismantle her dead grandparents for part. She meets Val again, and they decide to marry and later have a child. The child is given a very weak mainspring, and the father struggles to accept him. She sacrifices her own turns to carry her son and allow him to live fully. After a week, her husband emotionally abandons her, and she returns home to her father, who is now also old. Every day, she spends her turns to care for both her special needs son and her aging father. When her father dies, she returns to the train with her son, and Val sees her sacrifice and tries to make it up to her. They reunite as a family, and he takes turns using his turns to help their son, despite the fact that Val's never had as many turns as she did. While she uses her spare turns to help the others on the train, so when they are gone, their son won't be helpless and alone, Val apologizes for abandoning them as he dies, and shortly after, her own turns dwindle until a day when both she and her son have the same number of turns. They spend the day together, and she reflects on the fact that she's lived a good life because she's used her turns to help others. Now, I chose this story because it is a 2018 Hugo nominee, so this would be classified as science fiction, which is something we haven't really done a lot of on this show. And I think we've had some strong feelings about this story. And so just top level, Annie's, I'm going to let you just get it out of your system. Get it over with.
I know. I want to be nice, but also no, but I do. I didn't like it. And I'm going to get into why. I feel like I can really back up why I didn't like it. Your summary. I started writing down things you're writing in your summary. That's like, see, that's why I don't like it. That's why I don't like it. So I'm going to get into that. But yeah, I don't know how. You guys have to tell me why I'm wrong. Hopefully by the end, my score goes up because I'm coming in pretty low.
Not Rami low, surely.
No, not Rami low.
Because it has words.
No, but I was like, as I was reading the story, I was getting more and more upset. That's not good. Like,
no.
Yeah, no.
Okay. Gerald?
Well, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was an excellent little story. There you go.
Okay, sure.
I was with the act. I had a range of times where I was ending up and kind of seeing where it was going and feeling more positive. I think the word for how I feel about the story is conflicted, and I think that is story. I a lot of questions and some comfortable questions about the nature of womanhood, about the nature of being a mother, how much self-sacrifice is too much self-sacrifice. And so for all these reasons, I can totally understand where Annie's is coming from. You know, I think there's a lot to talk about in this story.
Yeah. No,
So
you see, I understand all that. I understand how you might be conflicted because of that. But I think it was a very clever story. I think it shone a light on womanhood and what it means to be a mother and what it means to have a child with special needs. I thought it did that really, really well.
yeah, I did too. And you know, at one point in Slack, me and Annie were complaining a little bit. And I was not coming down as negative. I was like, I like this story, but I don't understand why it's a Hugo nominee. And I was like, is this a reflection of the state of science fiction, or is there something in the story that I'm just not seeing?
Well,
And
yeah,
I'm not normally a science fiction reader, and so I wasn't sure. So I went and I read some other science fiction. Some of the other nominees, I think it's both. I think there are some things that I wasn't seeing on my initial read, but also I think that right now there isn't a whole lot of diversity in science fiction. So when you do come across stories with a lot of diversity, there is a need to celebrate those stories. And this story has a lot of diversity, both in the fact it's dealing with a disabled child, it's coming from a female, and homosexual ain't an issue at all. It's just they exist. And so in that respect, the story is full of a lot of cultural diversity. And I think that's important.
Yep.
Is it award-winning important? So here's what I'm going to say. You're right. The representation is very
important.
It wasn't
Nebula.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, the representation aspects of it are very important. And we're always striving to have more and more diverse fiction on the show for that reason. But you can't just tick the boxes and call it a day. And I'm not saying that's what this author did, but here's why I'm frustrated. Because I do like sci-fi, and I feel like when we've read sci-fi in the show before, I tend to usually be the most enthusiastic one, which is why I'm like surprised I'm the least enthusiastic. And it's because to me, when sci-fi is really good, it's taking sci-fi elements that are a symbol through which some aspect of the human condition is being examined, right? So here, there's a way, you know, turns is very much a stand-in for time and how we use our time. But then the conclusions that you get to, which you said in your summary, is that she led a good life because she used her turn/time to help others. And it's a little bit like that's the pithy sort of take, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what is the deep dive, the deep commentary on some aspect of the human condition or what it is to be human, which is usually what sci-fi is answering, right? Or even if it's not answering that, it's answering something else. It's like when you're doing it through clockwork dolls, basically, that's how it appeared to me. Like, what is the value added in making it turns? And what is the deeper message that you are getting to? So to me, it just felt really shallow. Like it just felt like you were taking cliche idioms and adages about time and replacing it with the word turn. That's how it felt to me for the main theme. And the secondary theme, which was about taking care of a disabled child, again, I felt like making it clockwork dolls.
Is she cutting out for you, or is it just me?
It's you.
That when you make it clockwork dolls, you're also, again, undermining the whole point you're trying to make about taking care of a disabled child who's disabled into adulthood, because everything about these people is very cold. When their grandparents die, they're just in a box until the carnival comes around, because you're better off recycling them at the carnival instead of going up to Attic City to the other recycling plant. And the way that you make a child is by just collecting things out of like a dump of parts and leaving it on the worker's bench. So there isn't this intimacy, right? Like it made me think a little bit of when in Octavia Butler's Bloodchild, when you're looking at this really creepy relationship between insectoid aliens and humans that are their slaves, and there's all this commentary on slavery, but then also the confusing part because they also sort of mate with them, but they nourish them, and there's this weird, it's like grossly intimate, grossly physical, and that's how she's getting her point across about all these different nuanced commentaries on this thing that she's trying to explore. And then here, it's just like, why would you do it with these robots? You're undermining your own point, because I'm just like, why don't you just get the parts replaced? You're so cold. You know what I mean? That's what frustrated me.
I think that you're wrong to equate the turns to time, because that's not what it is. The turns are equivalent to energy
Mhm.
or ability to
Your
function.
heartbeat.
Yeah, something like that. So as you get older, there are fewer turns in your mainspring, so therefore you have less energy. But then some people have less energy anyway. So people with like ME or chronic fatigue syndrome, they have fewer turns and they can't do as much. And I thought that that comparison was really, really good, really, really strong. And I know some people with ME, and it is like that. And they call it in that sort of fraternity they call it spoons, and they only have so many spoons each day to give to whatever they're doing. And when they run out of spoons, they have got no energy. They have got nothing left to give. So I thought that comparison was spot on, and then maybe that helped me understand the story more.
Yeah, I mean, in my notes, I have time/energy because it would kind of go to both. But like, it just still felt like I just felt like the choice to make it the Clockwork Dolls was undermining the point she was trying to make to a certain degree, because everything was just so mechanical and cold that any of the heartache or the human part that I'm supposed to identify with, I'm resisting at all times, because you have grandma and grandpa just like in a crate until the better recycling option comes around. You know, like there's just like a point to which it's just like, yeah. And then even if it is about that point that you were making, that she should be grateful because she was created with a lot of turns, so she's stronger, she has a good mainspring, and a lot of people aren't that lucky, and so she uses this to help others, everything like that. Isn't that point, the way that it's drawn out in the story, like, to me it just felt shallowly explored. Like it didn't, like, it almost just felt like an adage, like just a, you know what I mean? Like it just felt not deep enough. Like that, that's why I'm like, no. Like the very last line was my life has been different from the adventures I imagined as a child, but I made the most of the turns I was given, and that's all any of us can do. How is that your takeaway? Like, that's what was frustrating me. Like, it's just, it felt too thin. And I felt like the sci-fi element was undermining the whole point. Like, it should have been a different sci-fi element. And I feel like I'm being really harsh, so I really want someone to come in with something good, but I was so frustrated by that.
I just think you're being harsh. I think the writer imagined this world where people are basically clockwork dolls, and I liked the fact that they equated the energy that each of us has to a mainspring, and that was very strong. And so it's almost sort of steampunky in a way, because it's clockwork. I don't quite.
It's fun. Like the tone is fun, but yeah. That's what I'm at. Like, I'm like, it's not the clockwork on its face. It's not the steampunk on its face. I've read steampunk stuff that I enjoyed. It's just, to what end? That's where I'm getting frustrated. Like, what is your point here? It just, that's the part that I'm struggling with.
Well, I think the point is that that if you are strong and able to, you should use that strength to help others, and not just use it for your own sort of enjoyment. So I think she was a good person who recognized that she was strong, recognized that she could use her strength to help other people, and she used her strength to support her child. I think it's just clever the way it drew a parallel between their life and our lives.
You know, as you were speaking, I was thinking another short story we read that kind of does that a little bit, that shows someone who is inherently selfish move towards caring for others. Wasn't it Once Removed, Colette Sartor's story, where she worked literally at a nursery but was resisting having a child, and her boyfriend had a son who was disabled and required a lot of care?
Yes.
And I think the reason that one worked so well is because we're so close to Sophie, that in that story, and we're seeing her struggle, the back and forth, the hesitation, the reason she's resisting. And there's just a depth there that you can latch onto, that you're like, hey, I identify myself with parts of her thinking, and I can see the parts of her that are being really selfish, and I'm happy for the way that she's overcoming this. And it's almost like paving a way. It's making a statement about how we mature in this way. And Z is doing the same thing, but it's sort of so removed and so mechanical that in the end, it's like, in the Sympathizer, they talked about this where like adages, like the little like quotes and stuff, it's like the suit of an idea. It's the empty suit of an idea, right? That's how this feels to me. I think that's why I'm just like, I just wanted more. If we were closer to Z, maybe it would have worked. If we would have seen Z struggling with the decisions that she had to make to get to where she got in the end, where she had that epiphany, maybe I would have enjoyed it more. I think that's a little bit what it is for me. Like, yeah.
And I think that's quite hard if the author wanted to keep with the idea of mechanical people who don't really have feelings, who yes, the grandparents die and they just put in a box and wait for recycling and all that sort of stuff, which to me is quite funny and quite clever, and making a baby literally from bits that you can get, and
you want a lobster claw? That's hilarious.
I just
well, one thing that I liked about this story, and I think it's important, is that you're right, it is removed because that is the nature of robot stories. Robots don't have human emotions, but what that allows the author to do is she makes this selfless choice. Really, she's the only, like, her father takes care of her, true, but he's not really sacrificing himself. And this is something that nobody else in the society really does. None of the other robots, not her mother, no one is selfless because they are mechanical beings. And so when she decides to give up her own turns for the sake of her son, that sets her apart. That gives her a level of humanity that the other robots don't possess just because they are robots. And I think that's an interesting juxtaposition that couldn't have happened if all these robots had more human emotions.
I don't know. I see the way you're reading it, but I didn't read it like the other robots didn't have human emotion. I think they had the choice to care or not care as much as they wanted to. Her mom knew she should have, but didn't want to. Vale comes back later regretting that he hadn't. And Chet, who has no relation to the kid, ends up giving a lot of turns even after, like.
Did her mom know that she should have? I don't think she did. I think it was a very mechanical decision. She makes a child, and of course the father's going to take care of him because she doesn't want to waste the turns to raise it. Like, I don't think there was a value judgment on that. In no way does the mother say or hint that what she did was wrong.
I mean, I thought, well, we can relook at the conversation, but I think, like, I don't know, Gerald, do you agree that she's the only one that really has empathy? Because I just feel like there was a lot of other robots that I don't know if she's the first one.
Not the mother, no, because the mother saw that she wanted to have a life away from the family. She wanted
I'm literally getting like 10th word of this conversation. I'm not exactly sure how to record this like this right now. I'm just having a hard time even being able to participate.
Yeah.
What do we want to do?
Because you're cutting out to us as well.
Yeah, I'm like, you guys are cutting out for like entire portions of your comments, and then I'm not hearing them at all. I've tried moving the car twice to get better internet, and I think that there's something going on. I saw a bunch of power trucks when I woke up this morning, and so I think something happened with the storm. Do you guys want to continue this on your own, or do you want to record tomorrow?
I can't tomorrow.
Yeah, he's going to Boston, and we have to record today because we have Michael next week, so I'm announcing him for next week. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, one thing we could do is, even if we can't hear Maya, her microphone's picking everything up. So why doesn't Maya just sort of say everything that she wants to say?
Because it's hard to have a one-person conversation without hearing other people's thoughts.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's not much we can do other than that, is there really?
Yeah.
I can see if I can find better internet, but I don't
If Gerald
you
wasn't,
guys have a show in an hour.
yeah, because if Gerald wasn't, well, in half an hour now, if Gerald wasn't going to Boston, we could do it later this week, but he's not going to be here.
Well, we can try. You're a little bit better now.
Okay.
We can keep trying, but if I cut out for good, I don't know.
Okay.
Just giving you guys a heads up. That's what's happening on my end.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to lead a discussion when you can't hear people's comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Like I can't.
Yeah. So is it was we were talking about the mother of Z and her decision to go off and join the carnival because that's what she wanted to do.
And my argument is yes, because she's selfish, but I don't think it's inherently because she is a robot, because there's other robots that aren't. And I was wondering where you came down on that.
Yeah. No, I think she is selfish. I think they are, full robots and clockwork dolls. Yeah, she's gone. Then they have quite, they are self-aware, and they so they can make decisions based on logic and feelings and emotion. And yeah, I think the mother was just selfish, and it's kind of strange because she just it's this sort of balance between sentience and sort of robotics, because she was sort of cognizant enough to make the decision and just cut herself off. So it's like very harsh. There was no there seemed to be no second thoughts, no sort of regret to doing it. And I think she said that, didn't she, at one point, when and she said something like, well, I wanted to join the carnival, so I did. And it was just that sort of cut off, which is so it's I think it's kind of hard to write when you're sort of trying to balance these sort of two types of beings at the same time, and how much do you go one way or the other.
Yeah, and I guess that's a little bit like what I'm saying is, again, Chet, Vale, her father. So Vale also had it was a bit off screen, but he had the one where he was very selfish and then went to selfless again. Like he grew up, she grew up, right? And but it's just a little bit like, because, again, I just keep going back to the sci-fi choice is odd to me because of the way that people are created and are disposed of, that these robots are created and disposed of. I'm Team Vale when Vale kind of suggests, like, can't we just start over and make a new one? Like, why are you so attached to this one? Other than just the very simple, like, well, he exists, and now that he's here, it feels cruel to make him not exist. But also, like there's a certain, and I think that's why this message is getting undermined for me. Like, even if the message that you want to have is that you should be helping others, there's a degree to which it's like, yeah, but in this world, why isn't helping others like, you got a bad mainspring, gonna rebuild you with a new one? Like, why? You know what I mean? Yeah. It just feels really, yeah.
I think it is. I think it's yeah. I'm sorry, in danger of repeating myself. I think it's hard for the author to make that distinction between human-like emotional decisions and robotic decisions, and so you're right when you say, the when the grandparents die, they said, the mainspring went, and they don't work anymore. So that's sort of it's kind of heartless in a way, and yes, the parts get recycled, and that's, I don't know. I think it's, maybe it would have been better if there'd have been more emotion at that time. So maybe if there'd have been perhaps some sort of ceremony where they said goodbye to them, where there was some emotion, where there was some regret and thought about their lives, because she thought about her life a lot, what she was doing and how she was doing it and what she should be doing. This is a hard thing to talk about. This. Have you frozen now? Do what? Anais, you frozen? Have I frozen? Don't think so. This is the problem with internet-based conversations. Just saying. Bum, 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 and I'll still carry on recording and talk to myself. I liked the story. I thought it was a good story. I thought it was funny and witty and pithy and clever. Yeah, where's Come Back Anais? This particular podcast is doomed. Dum 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 dum. Come on, people.
Hey, we had a power surge.
Oh, did you? Oh,
that's what happened. Yeah, so everything went, and then the Wi-Fi had to reboot. I sent you a message on Slack.
Okay.
Yeah. So go ahead. I cut out. I forget where I cut out.
Yeah, I don't know either. Yeah, it's. I was just saying. I was just talking to myself and saying that the for all of our live listeners, that I think it is kind of difficult to imbue robotic creatures with some sense of, with some feelings and with some emotion, and then not carry it all the way through. So I think I agree with what you said about the grandparents. And I don't know if you heard that, but maybe it would have been more in keeping with the rest of the sort of emotional layers of these people, creatures, whatever, to have some sort of farewell celebration for them, rather than just stick him in a box and wait for the rubbish man to come.
And I mean, you can argue we stick people in a box at the end of a coffin, but the ritual part of it is the point, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. And you recognize that they're no longer here, but you look back on their life and you say nice things and you think about them. Yeah, and I suppose that was just kind of a bit cold. Yeah.
So I guess, yeah. And you were saying it's hard to give robots emotions, but so much sci-fi does that. So much sci-fi is giving robots so much emotion and response that they're indistinguishable from human, and that's the whole point of that sci-fi piece, right?
Yeah.
So that is necessarily the point of this one. This story isn't asking, do they count as people or do they not? It's trying to make that point about that a life dedicated to others is a good life worth living. And like I said, we've read stories that do that, and I think the distance from Z, and then the distance from Z to certain aspects of emotions that we recognize, such as mourning for the death of someone. These are all things that just, yeah, I think that's what it is. It just felt thin is the word I keep going to, which is disappointing because you can tell by the prose that this author knows what she's doing. The dialogue felt natural. The pacing was great. The sentence flow was wonderful. Like, I didn't struggle to get through it because of anything in the prose.
No, it wasn't. It was really well written. It was my sort of writing, very pacey and relatively sparse. Not trying too hard. Something we'll address in the sympathizer.
Wow, really?
Oh yes.
So excited for that discussion.
I think our roles are going to be reversed into that discussion.
Oh really? I'm a huge fan.
I'm going to be Mr. Grumpy for that one. Yeah, I think if you look at the attributes of the story, it was well written, well constructed, all that sort of stuff. The technical side of the writing was good. It was an interesting idea. I liked the idea. I liked the parallels and how she drew the parallels between aspects of our life and aspects of their life. And I think if there is a criticism, it's that occasionally she missed the mark and perhaps hadn't thought it through. It's blooming, competition winner. But you just think if had she thought it through a bit more and perhaps developed the idea a little bit more, maybe she could have sort of rationalized those things that didn't quite fit together.
As you were speaking, I realized this did win an award, and maybe it won an award for because it does so well the things that a lot of sci-fi struggles with. So I Googled her a bit, and she's a fairly prolific sci-fi writer. She has a novelette out, and she's won some other awards. And one of the things about sci-fi that's so hard is world building without an exposition dump. And she world built seamlessly. And that alone is impressive for a sci-fi writer. When it's a world that's foreign to all of us, and you're not just there being like, okay, this is the one-to-one, and let me map out for you this universe, and this is Attic City, and this is Closet City, and here's the car. She didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's published, famous novels that do that. Like, I love Ender's Game, but there's a chunk of Ender's Game that's just like, let me explain to you this world I just created in like a frothy way.
Yeah.
Right? So like, she didn't do that. And that's really impressive. So I can see people reading sci-fi all the time just coming to this and being like, oh, there's no massive exposition. What a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel bad being like so negative on like the theme. Like, I feel like the theme, the thinness, that part, when there's so many other elements of it that are really good, and I can see like why, if you've been reading, aspiring sci-fi all day, you're like, oh, thank you. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that's like, maybe if I had read one of her other works, I would have, come into it already predisposed to give her more leeway. It's a little bit like we read a David Foster Wallace story. Maybe it wasn't David Foster Wallace. No, it was it was a Kurt Vonnegut short story. And because I had already read a few novels and I was already a Vonnegut fan, I didn't like that short story. I came in kind of negative, but I tempered it more because he had already like earned my fandom, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder, like, if this, like, now, if I went into one of her other works where maybe the theme did feel better fleshed out, all these other things that she did so well would just really bring it to the surface and really make it shine.
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm giving her a bit of a pass on the theme because I just so enjoyed reading the story, and I enjoyed those parallels to our life, and I thought she did those very well, and I loved the way she wrote, and it was an entertaining story.
Yeah, I mean, I will say whenever there was so I feel like I'm always really in tune to like the thesis statements of a short story. So I as I was reading, when I'm just reading a scene, I'm just reading an interaction, I wasn't at all bothered. It just flowed. Right. It was when I read a thesis statement, I was like, nope, that can't be it. That was when I would get annoyed. That's the thinness I'm talking about. I think that was it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so, I'm not gonna sort of convince you otherwise, and I do have I have some sympathy for that point of view.
I've actually talked myself up a point by remembering that she's done some of the hardest things in sci-fi so well. She's built a world in not that many words for sci-fi. Sci-fi gets wordy very quickly, without a big exposition dump. The pacing is lovely, which a lot of times pacing in sci-fi, because of the exposition dumps, they kind of go together, right? Yeah. It's not so great. And the cleverness you were talking about is there. Like, even if I feel like the sci-fi choice that she made undermines her own theme, still, theme aside, it's still a lot of fun. Clockwork Dolls are just fun.
It is. And seeing things from the point of view of a clockwork doll is a pretty clever thing to do too. So I thought she did very well with that. So.
And there was little moments in there of just like little surprise. Like, not everything has to always be coming back to theme. So the fishing one, where you find out that it's a cheat, there's numbers on different sides of the fish.
Yes.
Yeah, like little stuff like that was just fun, like little moments of just little intrigue.
Yeah, yeah, and I think sometimes, yeah, you can read through something. Yes, your bit about the exposition, your point about the exposition was great because she starts off in the world, and you're right there. You don't need to know more than she tells you at any one particular time.
Yeah,
so
I was never confused.
Yeah, no, you just think, okay, this is a clockwork person, no problem. And you sort of wonder, where does the Carnival line come into it? And then you think, oh, okay, you sort of understand that. That's, yeah, I like it. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, that is impressive. You're coming into a clockwork world and I'm never confused. That's good.
It's not often you say that. It's
yeah. I feel like my show notes for this need to be like, it starts kind of negative on theme, then gets very glowing about everything else. Stick with it.
Yes, you came in very negative, very harsh.
Because that last line really annoyed me because it was like, made the most of the turns I was given. That's all any of us can do. I'm like, no, because then there's a part where like that almost starts to feel parable-esque. Like, like it's like, who is this for? Like, this is for adults. You got to move past that. You got to move deeper. What were the challenges to get there? Watch someone develop into that. And that didn't. Yeah. Well, anyway, we've exhausted that to death.
Rami would have enjoyed it.
Rami would. Actually, we don't know that.
Maybe. I
don't know. I'm not 100% confident on where Rami would fall on this.
Okay. Yeah.
I think Rami might have been a bit disturbed by the way that you make a robot baby and dispose of old robots.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he's right. There's sort of conflict with his beliefs.
Yeah.
I can understand that.
But hey, Vale's sister had a lobster claw, so Actually, that was another moment that I thought was really fun, like lighthearted, maybe grin, was when Vale feels dejected because of the no lobster claws, and he puts up a face that has the black stripes on it. And she's like hating the black stripes, but she can't keep saying no to him over and over. And having been in those shoes where like you have to say yes to one dumb thing because you said no too much. You're like, okay. That made me laugh.
So, can I quote you on that? You have to say yes to one dumb thing.
Yeah, you have to say yes to one dumb thing after saying no to that. Didn't I tell you the story of when my ex in Costa Rica put a pool on our 3rd floor balcony?
No.
Yeah, he put a pool on our 3rd because it was a terrible idea, but he had to learn that himself. And I had said no to so many other dumb things before that I couldn't say no one more time. And people were like, "You're insane. How can you say yes to this?" I'm like, "You don't know the 10 things before that I had said no to." Okay.
And you wish you'd have said yes to one of those other things.
Oh God. Yeah. Getting the water out of that thing. Whew, it was so heavy. He's like, I didn't know water was so heavy.
No, okay. Really? Oh, yeah. Who knew?
Good times. So that's when I learned that. So, I've been with you, Vale. I have seen the striped face.
Yes.
I mean, Z. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Don't know. Anything more to say?
Not really.
No.
Just that if Caroline Yoachim, I think it's pronounced, I hope she listened to the end and that I want to read your other stuff. Actually, I was talking to one of our other guests. I won't say which one, but she was saying, sometimes when you guys tear into like a known author, like somebody who's been like published like a lot on one story, I'm sitting there like, I love this author, but you're so right about this one tear down, but I can't say that out loud. I'm like,
right. Okay.
Yeah. They're like, that one story was bad. I'm glad you said it because their other stuff is great, but that one was bad.
Yeah. Well, even Stephen King says, looking back, said, "Yeah, I wrote some stinkers when I was when he was having his problems." So, yeah.
That reminds me of Stephen King's. Did you ever read or watch Dreamcatcher, the movie adaptation?
No, I don't think
it's a sci-fi horror he did, actually. Speaking of sci-fi, it has everything you could ever need. So he wrote it on Oxycontin after a car accident, and it shows. And it's got everything. It has aliens that go up your butt or come out your butt. It's a lot. Like it has like a military conspiracy. It has like a kid with like weird psychic power. It has people with psychic powers. It's got a cabin in the woods. It has a blizzard. It's got everything you need in a horror.
Oh, is that the one where somebody comes into the cabin in the woods and says, "Oh, you got to help me, guy," and he got stomach problems. Yeah.
Yeah. And then his butt gets blown out when the alien comes out.
Yeah.
Which in the movie and in the novel they literally call shit weasel. That's what they call it. That is the term. It's like it's one of my favorite of all time.
So he's probably heard this term. He said, "I could write a book about that."
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because apparently in an interview. So again, this is Stephen King's sci-fi. We're trashing here. Yeah. Because it's like objectively bad. But he said that the reason he wanted that is because when he was looking, he realized in the hospital for a long time in Oxycontin after the car accident. And there's also a car accident in the story. There's a whole bunch of stuff that he realized that the new horror nowadays is looking in the toilet and seeing blood because it could be cancer. So he wanted a way to get blood in the toilet. And he came up with this: aliens exploding out of your butt. Like, this is the new horror? Anyway.
He's Stephen King. He can do this.
He's Stephen King. So, yeah.
Right. Let's rate this puppy.
Mm-hmm. It's gone off on a little tangent here. Everyone go watch Dreamcatcher. You'll never regret that. Also in Dreamcatcher, they talk about a character for the first third of the movie as if he's dead, and then suddenly in the last act, he's alive. Like, they're in the cabin, they're like, to this person, if only he could be here. This person's alive. Anyway.
Spoiler alert. A bit late. Well, I'm gonna start. I'm gonna give it 5.0.
Really? Okay, great. Good.
Yeah.
It's at a 6 for people who are tuning in for the first time. I was coming in at a 2 just over this theme thing, but I talked myself up to a 3.5 even. The more we talked about, the fact that she's throwing me into a world, I'm never confused. There's never exposition. That's so hard to do when you have a completely made up world. And that right there is talent. And the dialogue and the pacing was great. Yeah. All the things I already said.
Very good. Yep. Well, that's not bad then. 3.5. That's pretty good.
It's not the worst. Yeah.
Praise indeed. It's not the worst.
It's not the worst. It's half a point up neutral the way.
Yeah. That's all. It's all good.
Mm-hmm. All right. So there's no game because next week we're going to be joined by Michael Laron, who has appeared on our shows in the past. We'll be reading his recommended story, The Broken Bottleneck by Hans Christian Andersen. A link is provided in the show notes as always. Also, I want to quickly announce that we have a closed Facebook group for listeners of our show to discuss the works we discuss on our podcast, including this one. Tell me I'm wrong. Come yell at me. So look up Literary Roadhouse Readers in Facebook or follow the link in the show notes to join the discussion. While you're there, go ahead and like the Literary Roadhouse Facebook page too. Helps us rank. All right. So I need to wrap this up because I'm running out of turns. If you also need more turns, we'll put you in touch with the maker on Twitter. Tweet us at Lit Roadhouse or visit our Carnival-like website with its many attractions such as past episodes and a sleepy newsletter that will soon be waking up from its freakishly long slumber. Go to www.literaryroadhouse.com and take a peek. And do you want more Clockwork Stories? Really? You do? Yeah. All right, so it's just me then. Okay, so join the Literary Roadhouse Book Club, a monthly show that discusses full fiction novels. And also we, like Z and Vale, are looking to create another podcast, baby. We're scrounging for parts. Support our podcast, baby ambitions, at patreon.com/Literary Roadhouse. Every bit helps. And as always, share this podcast with the 8-legged mother in your life. Until next time, read a good story.
Yay.